Hello and welcome to my channel, I Win to Lose Gaming. Only eons after the heat death of the entire universe can all of existence reach the infinite chill of absolute zero. And that isn't even as cool as Kinich is to every It's Not a Phase Mom 14-year-old boy. In this video, we'll see just how strong a Constellation Zero Kinich is with the free-to-play friendly claymore, the Earthshaker. So what is this video? The Creator Experience server has made its way over to Genshin Impact. Woohoo! This video was filmed on the Creator Experience server, and things may not be final. Please check the comments down below to see if there are any changes upon release. Anyway, Kinich is an incredibly fun and stylish character in Genshin Impact. So move aside, Xiao, because Kinich is the newest, coolest kid in the high school halls. Sporting a pixel grappling hook, an arm cannon, and a dragon Neopet, Kinich is a master of miracles by somehow making us gamers look cool. In this video, Kinich will be gaming with the free-to-play friendly craftable Earthshaker at Refinement 5. For his artifacts, he's using the 4-piece Obsidian Codex, and of course he's a free-to-play by the way gamer at Constellation 0, and his talents are at 6, 9, and 9. We'll go through his kit, some team showcases, a Nuke showcase, various Overworld showcases, and while I can't showcase any Abyss 12 footage, I will talk about my experience with him in the Abyss as well as my opinion on Kinich. Starting off with his basic attacks, Night Sun style. We all knew that these aren't going to be doing much damage. Despite that, we can admire his dank animations as he hangs onto his Neopet Aha to leverage that height for his normal attack. Not only that, but Kinich has the most unique charged claymore attack in the game. He just yeets the darn thing to where it ends up spinning more than a compass during his geometry test. Despite these epic animations, you will pretty much never use these, just like how Kinich will never use his knowledge from school, wherein mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. Okay, I wasted too much time on his basic attacks, so let's hook on over to his elemental skill, Canopy Rider, Riding High. Kinich grapples onto an unfortunate victim where he pew-pews and big booms, aka fires loop shots and skill spike cannons, all while strafing around his hapless victim. His skill is a bit complicated with all of this associated with it, so let's hop right into it. Kinich enters Night Soul state where he starts with 0 Night Soul points and can accumulate a maximum of 20 Night Soul points. Once he reaches 20 Night Soul points, he'll gain access to his Scale Spike Cannon, which is this big boom attack. At level 9, his Scale Spike Cannon has a massive 1168.8% multiplier. Needless to say, this is where most of his damage comes from, and he'll want to big boom as much as possible. So how does he gain Night Soul points? He gains 2 per second passively, he gains 3 per pew pew, he gains 7 whenever an enemy is affected by burning or burgeon, which happens with a 0.8 second cooldown, and he gains 4 per triangle minigame that he goes into. Triangle minigame, you ask? Great question. Kinich, being the sweaty gamer that he is, has gamified murdering the local fauna of Teyvat by creating a triangle zone, aka blind spot, attached to the enemy he has grappled, and then going into this triangle zone, Kinich will gain 4 Night Soul points. This triangle appears to respawn on a randomish side of the enemy per big boom shot. And now we can see his kit is really starting to take shape. Well, our Regisfine friend couldn't even survive this much abuse from pew-pews and big booms. We're going to have to move on to a thicker volunteer. Let's take a look at this side by side of the lack of burning on the left and with burning on the right. On the left, without burning, we can see that Kinich was able to fire his cannon just 3 times, while on the right, he was able to fire his cannon 4 times. Generally speaking, you are able to get 2 to 3 cannon fires without burning or burgeon, and 4 with occasionally 5 with burning. Factoring in various factors including burning's damage, assuming you're doing 4 cannon shots instead of 3, he's now doing around 40% more damage in the example on the right. Something else you might have noticed is that the first cannon shot did noticeably more damage at 84,568 damage in comparison to the second cannon shot, which dealt 66,389 damage to our robot chicken friend. This is because of Kinich's Night Soul Burst mechanic. And unfortunately for editing I Win to Lose, I have to explain this every time I talk about a new Natlan character, Night Soul Burst. If you have any Natlan character in your party, and if literally any character in your party deals elemental damage, you'll see this full screen flash thing. The cooldown is shared party-wide, and the cooldown for having 1, 2, and 3 Natlan characters for triggering a Night Soul Burst is 18, 12, and 9 seconds respectively. Kinich's Night Soul Burst mechanic basically provides him with 320% additional multiplier to the next Big Boom cannon shot. His current teams will generally see this come into play once per rotation. Against multiple targets, fortunately, if his first relationship with his grappling hook ends before his 10-second latch duration is over, he's able to immediately move on to his next crush and latch onto them. Holding the skill button also allows him to aim his grappling hook, which can help him latch onto a specific target or even airborne enemies. Surprisingly, the AoE on his cannon shots is larger than I expected, frequently hitting adjacent enemies. Now needless to say, this isn't super reliable since Kinich moves around like a madman, but you'll still frequently get some juicy AoE blasts from his Mega Buster. His cooldown timer starts when he uses his skill, and it has an 18-second cooldown. You also notice that there's a 3, 2, 1 countdown timer, which notifies you that his skill's duration has 3 seconds, 2 seconds, 1 second left on its duration, and it's about to expire. If you swap off during his 10-second latch duration, unfortunately you will lose his Night Soul state. From my observations, he also generates 4 to 5 Dendro particles on his first cannon shot per skill use. But as always with particle generation, we'll need a bit more testing to conclusively confirm that. While his Pew Pews and Big Booms count as skill damage, the Pew Pews count as performing a normal attack, triggering things like Xingqiu's and Yelan's burst. However, the Big Boom itself does not appear to count as performing a normal attack. Fortunately, you can dash during it to help reposition and dodge stuff, and you'll also relatch onto targets even if you leave the tether distance by simply pressing the basic attack button after getting close enough to an enemy. And this here is why Kinich is one of the coolest characters in the game. Yeah, that's right, he's able to outspin the Regispine's 360-degree cryo laser of death. Phew, we can finally move on to his elemental burst. Hail to the almighty Dragon Lord! Kinich uses his Yokai Wash to summon his Neopet Ahau. With the initial skill hit plus 6 lasers, despite Ahau's hubris, the total multiplier of the almighty Dragon Lord is 1459.6%, which is roughly the same as the first cannon shot from Kinich. And very uniquely, his elemental burst also extends the duration of his elemental skill by 1.7 seconds. This means that you actually won't lose valuable hook time, and you'll still be able to blast out 4 big booms. Needless to say, Kinich is great for exploration and is even able to use his skill in midair. He's also able to spot Natlan unique resources and provides the party more movement speed upon collecting certain harvestable items. Let's now finally take a look at his full kit in action. Now, I had multiple attempts that took the same number of attacks to take out a robot chicken friend, but I wanted to include this imperfect run to demonstrate many points. First of all, yes, like other Natlan characters, there is some jank in his kit, but he was still able to retether and shoot 4 big booms, even after the robot chicken ended up moving so far away. Next, he has some very impressive resistance to interruption, not once getting staggered by the Aeon Blight Drake. And third, chasing down an airborne Aeon Blight Drake and shooting it down out of the sky is just the chef's kiss in terms of satisfying gameplay. Alright, now if you're a bit confused by his entire kit, well, as a wise philosopher once said, grab on fire bad guy, maybe bring big lizard, pew pew, pew pew, big boom. Generally speaking, with burning involved, you'll need about 1 to 3 pew pews per big boom. Phew, we can finally move on and take a look at some full team showcases. Starting with this free-to-play by the way team consisting of Kinich, Bennett, Xiangling, and Collet. The goal of this team is to burn the enemy, buff Kinich's attack, deal some non-negligible pyro damage, and apply deep woods. Now what's crazy about this clip is that I was actually able to get 5 cannon shots, and this was my only attempt while trying to make this entire video where I was able to get 5 cannon shots. Perhaps with enough training, 5 cannon shots could become the norm in the future. Anyway, with this free-to-play by the way team, and the legendarily rare 5 cannon shots, Kinich was able to barely single cycle our 1 million hit point robot chicken friend. This is a reasonable performance for a free-to-play friendly team. The next team is the smells like a great idea team. Combining the power of smelling good with Emily's perfume and having an idea with data. This is currently one of my personal favorite Kinich teams. Emily deals some very solid sub DPS for this team, and Dea provides both defensive utility as well as great Deepwood Memories application. This also shortens the team's rotations, assuming Dea has Sacrificial Greatsword since you're not waiting for Xiangling's burst. Up next is the Burgeon's Not a Burden team. Now we all know that Burgeon is a burden in single target scenarios, and this team couldn't even come close to even taking out a robot Dorito friend. I also tried another Burgeon team variant in an AoE scenario with Nahida and Kokomi, and it did fine. Although it did about just as well as this next team, which is the Thrilling Tales of a Howl Slayer team. By simply using a Pyro Catalyst like Klee or Yanfei, and in this example I used Tenacity C0 Klee, we're able to pass on the Thrilling Tales of a Howl Slayer buff to Kinich for even more attack, dealing an impressive 199,000 first cannon blast. Still, this was just a bit shy of a single cycle and would have needed that elusive 5th cannon shot. As I mentioned earlier, in situations with clumped up enemies, Kinich's AoE is quite serviceable, with this Mega Buster able to hit enemies that are near each other. This can make it worth it to sometimes run a grouping character with him even. But alas, we have more teams to showcase, so let's move on to the next team. The Furina is Cool 2 team. Now I found it harder to squeeze Bennett into this team composition because of Furina's Hydro application, making it much more difficult to keep burning up time. Still, Kinich's personal damage output is lower here, but as always, Furina's damage usually makes up for this. And despite some wonky tethering mechanics, which I've come to realize is likely due to the robot chicken's tail, we were still able to comfortably single cycle our robot chicken friend here. Now for a quick Nuke showcase. So in case you aren't aware, there's this new place to nuke the living bejeebies out of an enemy with around 900% bonus damage. I was a bit conflicted about whether or not I should include this, because this is even more inflated than against the Scaramucci boss fight. With just the Deep Woods from Furina and Bennett's buff, because unfortunately Molani sacrificed herself, and even with this very suboptimal setup, Kinich was able to hit for over 730,000 damage here. Let me know if you'd like this specific nuke showcase to be featured in future videos, or if we should live in the past against something a bit more reasonable like Scaramucci. So yeah, what do I think about Kinich? Overall, I think he is a solid, above average main DPS character. When Kinich is properly invested, he should do quite well in Abyss. And once he has an actual full team, I can see him being very powerful. Speaking of full teams, it's painfully apparent that his full team is not complete yet. And despite that, he still feels quite strong. Fortunately, even without Emily, he's still a great standalone character. But I do think his best team will likely involve Emily, who unfortunately very few people even have. He's also surprisingly usable with Bennett, because Bennett's buff lingers for a couple of seconds even after you leave the circle, and because you can usually strafe in and out of Bennett's circle, you are able to effectively utilize Bennett's buff. Still, it can feel quite inconsistent and quite restrictive, especially against mobile targets. And there's also no denying that there's a certain amount of jankiness in Kinich's kit, as his tether mechanic has some awkwardness with moving targets as well as large targets with weird wonky hitboxes. I often found him trying to strafe around the robot chicken's tail, which led to him getting super far away from it, or even the Regisline's face, which led to some very awkward positioning. But despite that, he is an undeniably fun and interactive character, with additional gamification of his kit through the triangle minigame. Now, I'm not as quick as I used to be, so I usually only get 4 cannon shots, but perhaps some of you young whippersnappers and Mario Party masters can master the triangle minigame to bring out Kinich's maximum coolness with 5 cannon shots. Let me know what you think about Kinich down in the comments below. As always, I appreciate every single one of you. This is I Went to Lose, signing out.